Welcome to another Discovery Bible class. Pastor Ron and Mary are on holidays. I am Wilf Kazmaier and will be your speaker today. Today's talk I've called Searching for Hidden Treasure. You know, some people may think it strange that you are a follower of Christ. So Jesus told a couple of parables to show that it's not only reasonable to follow Jesus, but that it's the obvious choice. We find these parables in Matthew 13, verses 44 and 45. In verse 44, Jesus says, "The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy went and sold all that he had and bought that field." If you knew there was treasure hidden in a field, you would be glad to buy that field for the treasure. Now, you may have heard the story of a farmer who owned an orchard, but he had a son who was lazy and not interested in farming, and certainly not interested in doing hard work. When the farmer lay dying, he called his son to his deathbed and said, "Son, there's a treasure hidden in the field. It's buried among the roots of the old fruit trees." The farmer passed away, but he never told the son which tree the treasure was buried under. Well, this intrigued the young man, so the next year he picked a tree and began to dig among its roots. He didn't find anything. So then he went to another tree and continued digging, and did this all year long. At the end of the year, he had found nothing. But because he had dug around the old root trees and loosened the soil, that following spring, the old trees were revived. Water got into the roots, and they produced a bumper crop. At harvest time, the son sold the fruit, which was now of great value. His father was right. There was a treasure hidden in the field, but not as the son had thought it would be. The second parable, Jesus says the following: "Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went away, sold everything he had, and bought it." Now, I don't know of any merchants looking for fine pearls, but I do have a friend, a young man, who likes to search for gemstones, in particular, rhodolite garnets. Torrin is a former student of mine. He was in my high school physics class, and he is good friends with my nephew Ben. After Torrin graduated from high school, he took a degree in geology, and since then he has been on the hunt for garnet gemstones. One day he told me that these garnets are formed under the high pressure and the great heat that is found deep in the earth. This is similar to diamonds, as you may have heard. They have to be brought to the surface by some volcanic eruption. The west coast of North America has many of these old volcanoes. And so, if you know what to look for, you can find rock formations that might have gemstones in them. Well, Torrin knew about one of these areas. It's found in northern British Columbia in a very remote area. He talked my nephew Ben into a backpacking trip to this region. They were going to search for garnets. Well, after days of trekking, and in the worst weather, it was rain and snow all the way, they got to where the rock formations were. And they did indeed find some garnets. Here is one of the garnets that they found. They found a number of these, but that's not worth very much. Then, one day, they found this garnet. Now, this one is in Torrance rock collection and is his prized possession. He tells me that if you went to a mineral store and found this in their collection, you would be well advised to pay up to $1,000 for that sample. Taking his word for it. Not only is it large in size, but by the shapes of the flat edges and so on, you know that this particular rock has formed around a gem crystal that is inside of it. Torrin tells me that if you were to remove the outer layers, you would find the gem inside, and if it was of the clarity and color that you're looking for, then it could be worth 100 times the money you paid for it. So that would be a good investment. I don't know why Torrin hasn't taken the time to find the gem inside. I wonder if he'd rather dream of the possibility of what might be in there than to finally put it to the test and find out if it really was worth the fortune that he thinks it might be worth. That's the story that Jesus told us in the two parables. Now, I'm not here to try to sell you on a real estate deal where I think there might be treasure hidden in the field, nor certainly am I here to join the next backpacking trip to the wilds of BC looking for gemstones. Jesus told these parables because he says there is something much more valuable available, and it is available to everyone. The problem is that much of what Jesus has to offer, most people don't recognize. It's like this rock sample. Most people would know that it was very valuable. It just looks like a kind of an interesting ordinary rock. But for those who know, there might be a fortune there. Well, we see this in the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John begins and talks about the incarnation of Jesus, that God himself, who created the universe, came into the world. And as it says in John 1:10-13, it says, "He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him." The Jewish people had been waiting for their Messiah for years and years. And yet when God incarnate did show up, they didn't recognize who it was. But it goes on and says, "Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. Children born not of natural descent, nor of a human decision or a husband's will, but born of God." There are some who recognized the treasure that was there, and they received Christ, and as a result were born of God. Now there's an interesting story of how this works in John 4. It is the story called the woman at the well. Jesus was going back to Nazareth from Jerusalem. Now ordinarily, Jewish people would not go directly north. They would take a big detour around the country of Samaria. And that's because the Jews and the Samaritans didn't get along. But on this occasion, it tells us that Jesus went directly through Samaria and came to the town of Sychar, near the plot of ground where Jacob had given to his son Joseph, and there was a well there called Jacob's Well. It was about noon. A Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" Now the Samaritan woman was shocked for 3 reasons. The first reason, she said, "You are a Jew and I'm a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. She was surprised that a Jew would talk to a Samaritan. She was also surprised that a man would talk to a woman. That usually wasn't done in their culture. And truth be told, she was surprised that anyone would talk to her. You see, as we find out later in the story, this woman had had a very difficult life. She had been married 6 times, and those marriages had fallen apart. In fact, she was living with someone else at this time who wasn't even her husband. She was also a bit of a social pariah. You see, normally people would go to draw water in the morning. This was a semi-arid country. You would not go in the middle of the day, in the heat of the day. You would go first thing in the morning when it's cool. And you also wouldn't go by yourself. You'd probably meet your friends there, and it'd be a bit of a social occasion. But this woman was not welcome to draw water in the morning. She had to come alone in the middle of the day because she was a bit of a social outcast. Now, Jesus knew all these things about her, and yet he wanted to meet with her because he had an offer for her. We read it in the next verse. Jesus said, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again." And so he answered her in verse 10, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is who asks you for a drink, you would ask him, and he would give you living water. And whoever drinks the water that I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." See how Jesus put this? He said, if you knew the gift and who it is who was asking you for a drink, you would realize that he has a treasure to offer you, living water. And Jesus was offering that to her now. Would she take him up on his offer? Well, as the story goes on, she does. She said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." She believed he had something to offer her, and she wanted it. In fact, she was so excited about what she had received that she ran back to the town, as we were told later, and told all her friends, "Come and see this man who has living water to offer you." And they also took him up on his offer. See, this woman had found a great treasure, living water from Jesus. Jesus makes this offer to all of us. Turn with me, if you would, to John 7, verse 37 and 38. Another incident in the life of Jesus. In this occasion, Jesus had gone to Jerusalem and was attending the Passover festival. The Passover festival was the greatest festival that the Jews celebrated. Everyone that could would come to Jerusalem, and they'd be there for a whole week, for 7 days of celebration. And it said that Jesus, for the first 6 days, said nothing. He was quiet. We don't have a sermon from the festival, a whole series of sermons. No, he waited. In fact, it says he waited until the last and the greatest day of the festival. And then on that last day, he stood up and said in a loud voice. Certainly, he had a message to give that would be important. You'll be happy to know it's a very short sermon. But what important message did he have to give that he waited until he had the largest crowd on the greatest day of the festival and then announced this in a loud voice? Well, here's his message. Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scriptures has said, rivers of living water will flow from within them. He said, are you thirsty? Come to me, and I will give you drink. The same message that he had offered to the woman at the well. Have you found this living water that Jesus offers? How do you find it? You get it through faith. What is faith? Hebrews 11:6 says, faith is believing that God exists and that he rewards those who seek him. Jesus makes us an offer of living water. Do we believe the offer is true? And then do we seek for it? We are told that if we seek for what God has to offer, you will find it. Jesus said, ask and it will be given you, seek and you will find, knock and the door will be opened to you. But of course, some people don't believe that there is a treasure there. They don't recognize the treasure that Jesus is. But those that do earnestly seek him. And if they earnestly seek him, they will, like the woman at the well, find that he does give you living water, the greatest treasure there ever was offered. I hope you find it. I hope you seek it. I want to close today with a poem. It's by one of my favorite authors, the hymn writer and poet, Annie Johnson Flint. I've a collection of many of her poems. You can find them on the internet. This one seems to be appropriate for what I was talking about today. I find it interesting that Jesus, talking to the woman at the well, did not offer her a cup of water, but instead said that it would be a river of water that she would find. And same with his announcement at Passover. He said anyone who is thirsty, he would find rivers of living water, not just a cup. Well, here's the poem by Annie Johnson Flint. She says it's a new prayer. She says, I've been praying wrong. She says, long have I prayed this prayer to thee. According to my need, give me a little strength from day to day, a little light along the way, a little trust when fears are nigh, a little peace when waves run high, and with thy love and joy fill up the blessing in my little cup. So have I prayed for long. But now, think about it. Jesus didn't say little cup. He said a fountain of living water. He said rivers of living water. So now she changes her prayer. According to thy grace, give thou. Of my small measure take no heed. Above, around my puny need, pour out the treasures of thy good. Let thy great goodness, like a flood, my meager life fill and overflow, till I unto thy gifts shall grow. Give joy exceeding all I sought, and love beyond my utmost thought. Thy riches for my poverty, according to thy grace, give me. May you find God's living water, and may it be a fountain and a river that flows through your life, now and forevermore. Thanks for attending.